Chapter 156. A very small noise woke me up, the sound of hand turning a doorknob click. I woke up to the sound and opened my eyes, but it was still dark in front of me. I was scared for a moment. Did I dream of being rescued? Am I still stuck in the carriage? However, the soft touch of the blanket in my reflectively moving hand told me that this was a different place. At the same time, I lost all the strength I had in my body, and I thought again. I quietly moved my hand and touched my eyes. As expected, it was covered with blindfolds. I haven't seen the light for a long time, so my eyes hurt when I open my eyes and see a bright light. Someone did this for me. I was completely relieved to think so, and various information began to come in through senses other than vision. The smell of fire as the firewood burns, the touch of soft and warm bedding, and a voice that talks from a distance. Why isn't she still up? Is she seriously sick? Oh, it's Gilyu. She has been sleeping for 3 days. Shouldn't we wake her up? A slightly lower voice than Gilyu. Mayron, Lady Florentia is very tired. Don't worry too much. The only thing that's hurt is her forehead. Esira's here too. Instead of black silence, I kept laughing at the voices of familiar people. I thought I could lie down like this and listen for hours and hours. How are you two, Shoulders? Estira asked. I'm fine, but Gilly's been moaning all night. Mayron replied, Well, it's the first time I've ever used aura that much. Can you give me more of that ointment, Dr. Estira? It's very cool and nice. Sure, I'll give you as much as you want, so don't hold it in, Sir Gilyu. I thought they were talking about Estira's ointment. Then Mayron said, Doesn't my uncle have to apply it too? You were busy replying to the letters until late last night. Haha, then I'll borrow some. My wrist is a little sore. Oh, it's my father. The sweet voice with a smile was obviously my father. It's a long way to Ivan's estate. How did he get here? Do you get a lot of letters asking after Lady Florentia? Estira asked my father. Don't even say that. Father, Sister Shannonette, Lorraine, and Queenie. It's not going to be an uproar from Lombardy to here by using emergency troops several times a day. If you hadn't helped me write back, I would have stayed up all night. Everyone was worried. Hoo hoo, when Florentia wakes up, everyone will hear something. How can you just use the emergency messenger phrase like that? Haha, I think so. The laughter that I had endured burst into the sound of my father's laughter. I'll write the reply to this letter myself, Dad. Tia, I could hear several people running toward my bed at the same time. Isn't Ivan's estate very far away? What is everyone doing here? I asked with a smile. Of course, after hearing the news of Tia, I ran right away. Right, we've been from Lombardy to here in just 4 days. Do you know how worried we were about you, Tia? The twins replied quickly to each other's anger. I arrived yesterday, Lady Florentia. I'm a little late for the carriage ride. I'm sorry. No, it took me 10 whole days from Lombardy to here. If you had arrived yesterday, you wouldn't have been able to rest all night. Thank you, Astira. The eye patch is very uncomfortable, isn't it? I've made the room dark, but I covered it because it could be too much. If it's late, you can take off your blindfold for a moment. Yes, I see. So I had a conversation with Astira and suddenly realized that there's someone who hasn't said much yet. Dad, are you okay? Tia. Oh my goodness. As expected, my father's voice was very trembling. My crybaby father. I'm fine now. You were very surprised. Sorry. I turned my face to the side where my father's voice came in and smiled brighter on purpose and said, Of course, when I passed by, the road collapses. I was a little unlucky, right? I had no choice but to stop talking. It was because his less trembling fingers touched my hair that flowed down slightly. Yes, I'm glad you're all right. I'm so glad. I could tell without looking what kind of expression my father has now. I held my father's hand and said, Everything's fine now, Dad. My father kept sweeping my forehead without saying a word. I laughed, feeling more relaxed than ever at his touch. When I feel happy for a while, another curiosity pushes into my head. But what happened to Migente Ivan? Is he all right over there? The answer came back from Estira. He broke his leg, and it took him quite a while to get it treated, so the repercussions will still be there. But he's recovering smoothly. If it's the after effects, I think he's going to limp. Ah, I thought the shape of his leg was a little weird, but it broke. I now understand what was worse than me. What about Perez? Why do you ask the prince? My father asked me back, wondering. I'm stuck down there, and I don't think Perez would have stayed still. It was a vague inference, but the credibility was very high. My father was silent for a moment, and replied in a slightly pouty voice somewhere. His Highness is fine. He has worked so hard to rescue you, but he's recovering fast. Oh, there he is. I heard my father's word, and the click at the door. Perez, it's so uncomfortable because my eyes can see. Step, step. Instead of answering, I heard footsteps approaching me. We're going out for a while, Tia. Please talk for a moment. For some reason, my father and others quietly moved away. Everyone's out, and only me and Perez are left. I reached out to Perez. Fortunately, a big hand grabbed my hand right away. Have you eaten? But he did not answer. Perez, you know I can see right now, right? I don't know if you don't tell me. Sorry, Perez's voice cracked very low. What? For letting you go through it alone. Oh, I could roughly tell what he was thinking. Thank you for your concern. Don't think about it. What if you were in there with me? Didn't you bring me out because you were outside? Perez held my hand more tightly without a word. I wish it hadn't happened at all, but I think it happened in the best circumstances. I came out like this. Actually, it's a bit scary considering the narrow dark carriage. I said as calmly as I could. And in fact, it wasn't as scary as I thought. I thought you were gonna save me. I mean it. I said, holding his hand as tightly as Perez did. Especially Perez, it was reassuring to think that you were out there, although the waiting time was a little boring. Tia, now you have to think that it's time to forget about it and get back to normal life. Then I'll feel better. So will you, Perez? So will you, Perez. Okay, he answered obediently, but there was still no energy in his voice. Well then there's nothing we can do. I picked up the blindfold just a little bit. It wasn't very bright inside, as Estira said, whether the room had a thick curtain. I blinked a few times and there was nothing wrong with my eyes. I took off my blindfold as it was. Tia, Perez was surprised, but I didn't stop, and I opened my closed eyes slightly. Right in front of me, I could see Perez's face full of worries. I knew it. The pupils shake like an earthquake, and the tail of the eyes is drooping down. I raised my hand and touched Perez's cheek slightly. Of course, the crazy beauty didn't go anywhere, but it was very upsetting. You're worse than me, aren't you? I'm fine. I'm recovering well. You are more than me. You and I should eat well for a while. I deliberately put my hand on Perez's face, speaking more lightly and naturally, let go of my grip. I felt Perez's gaze staying there for a while. What about Lord Ivan? He resigned the day you were rescued, and the next day, he officially passed over to Megante Ivan, who came to consciousness. I think he's trying to take full responsibility for your accident, but I'm not going to put it that way. Perez's voice saying so was a little grim. He has to take responsibility for what happened. No, Perez, let Jerome Ivan bear all the burden. But I shook my head and I stopped her, Perez. Megante Ivan is the one who will give you a vote of consent if you are appointed as the crown prince. Now, if the representative of the northern part is changed to a family other than Ivan, the reward of having suffered this hardship will disappear. Perez looked at me for a moment. His red eyes had sunk heavily. It's been a long time since I've seen that look, so I asked with a small wince. What? Why do you look at me like that? Don't tell me it's because of me that you're linking Lombardy and pellets to Northern Relief and Ivan. Why not, Perez? You'd better get ready now. You know, you've already started working on it, right? That's why you longed for the Triva tree that way, but Perez's expression continued to be alarming. The moment I thought it was reminiscent of that day at the lake, Perez's hand touched my cheek. I was so surprised that my eyelids looked at Perez unknowingly, trembled. It was strange. It felt so different from when I touched Perez's cheek a while ago, and Perez's lips touched my forehead. Before I could stop them, thump, thump, my heart started beating violently. After a long time, Perez, whose lips were moved from my forehead, stared at my face for a moment. It seems like it was burning hot, because it was a position where my eyes could be met with his intense eyes. As it was, Perez did not move, like waiting for me to be ready. I bit my lip once, without realizing it. I didn't know why, as if just before opening the awaited present, it was full of impatience, and as if it were a sign, Perez's face slowly approached. I could avoid it if I wanted to, but instead I closed my eyes. Perez's lips, which came a little faster than I expected, touched my lips very slightly. A hot body temperature was felt through the thin skin. Suddenly I remembered Perez, whom I had seen several times in my dream, the face that came to everyone with cold eyes on the horse, and at that moment Perez rubbed his lips furiously. It's as if he can't be satisfied with a soft kiss. When the heart was conveyed, the heart pounded again, and beating fast greatly. The difference between Perez in my previous life and what he is now has been mixed up in my head. His hard fingers were digging into my hair to get closer. Perez's body was also felt. It was as if we were speaking with the whole body. He wants me to accept him. My heart was talking too. I want to accept Perez. Unknowingly, I raised one hand and placed it on Perez's chest, and I grabbed his clothes and pulled them close. No, I was going to, but when I realized how much I wanted Perez, I came to my senses. I suddenly pulled back and removed the strong entangled lips. Well, what are you doing? I almost fell for it. At my shout, Perez looked at me with eyes as if the heat hadn't gone away, and without taking his eyes off me, he stole my wet lips with his thumb and said in another voice, Tia, you told me before, love without expression is not love. Hey, that's just to Avenox. I almost lost you once, Tia. Perez reached out to me. Now I don't hesitate. And then with his finger, he rubs my lips a little, because I think I know your heart now. Perez's eyes looked down at the wrinkles on his shirt and said, just a moment ago it was the place that I clenched tight with my hand without me realizing it. He touched my wrinkles part of his clothes. He touched the wrinkles part of his clothes with a proud face somewhere. Then he said with a very deep smile, now I'm going to express it, Tia, until you're ready to accept my heart. It was a declaration of war. Oh, war of love. War for love. End of chapter 156. Chapter 157. After the accident, I had to recuperate in Ivan for another week and calm down. I was wondering if I should spend the winter in Ivan, where it snows a lot. After hearing the news, my grandfather sent me a specially modified carriage to Ivan so that I could lie down comfortably and travel to return to Lombardy. A few months have passed since I returned to Lombardy from Ivan. Winter passed and spring came, while I regained my stamina and returned to my daily life. In other words, it was the beginning of the social season. And as if waiting, the Empress opened the door to a new season with a splendid and grand banquet. All those who are struggling in the empire and social circles, including myself, are called in. I took a glass of liquor from a passing servant. You've used all the best alcohol and food. Even the imperial banquets don't usually go this far. It was a part of how much the Empress cared about this banquet. Normally, it was just the first banquet of the season hosted by the Empress, but the purpose was obvious. She's trying to promote Western tourism, which has been developed to some extent. Then she can just promote it honestly by using a false title of imperial banquet to the end. You can still see what the Empress thoughts on the act of making money. She's a great person in many ways. I'm serious about half of it. The Empress gradually promoted the development of the West under various unfavorable conditions. Triva trees, the main wood needed for construction, are far short, and the ones on the market are empty due to the monarch top demanding a huge amount of money. And the relationship with the North has been strained. In addition, Anjana sell lands to pay amercement for liability for landslides. However, the Empress managed to develop the West enough to start a tourism business. I took a sip and looked at the people at the center of the banquet. It's all thanks to Lord Lombardy's hard work. The Empress spoke in a slightly louder voice, as if to listen to those who were paying attention to her. Ha ha ha, it's the imperial business, so I have to help. Vis laughed in a louder voice, with his mouth as if hanging over from his ears. Of course, I didn't forget Susu's help. I'm flattered, Empress. When the Empress looked across from Vis and said, a stranger answered with a slight lift of glass in his hand, that person is Chanton Susu. He was exactly as he was rumored. He was originally the head of an imperial knight of the imperial family. The atmosphere felt from afar is quite different from other nobles. He was a man with short hair that was easy to manage, and a bitter eye, and a body that seemed to be big. So he was still more suitable for an active duty knight than the owner of a family. It seems that I am not the only one who thinks so, but even now, people were not able to approach him as if there were round shields around the Lord of Sisu. It's only Grandpa and Perez who have that much pressure in the capital. You mean me? Oh my gosh. I stepped aside half a step at the sudden voice from the right. As I looked at it, I could see Perez smiling, curving his eyes. Go ahead and play, Perez. I wanted to surprise you a little. I can't even get mad at him for being so honest. Hi, Tia. Hi. I've been distancing myself from Perez since the kiss incident in Ivan. However, as he had already declared war, he was not concerned about such things. Of course, only in private. Even now, Perez was holding his back and no longer approaching me when I was on guard. Even though the eyes that still looked at me were full of subtle laughter. What's more depressing here is that Perez's presence keeps my heart pounding. I narrowed my eyes and glared at Perez. Again, that expression again. I don't know what you're talking about. Somehow I'm worried that I'm getting sly day by day. I gave Perez a second look in the face and asked, pointing to the Empress, Beast, and Lord Susu at the tip of my chin. What do you think about that coalition? Well, the words were not very important, but Perez's eyes looking at the Empress stood before he knew it. I spoke with a lower voice. I heard the popularity of the Empress and the First Prince is increasing because of the combination. On top of that, these people still don't know that Lombardy architecture hasn't been paid for properly. So it happened because of their eyes. The alliance between Lombardy and Dungeness seemed pretty solid. In addition, Vise openly bragged that his personal money had been invested in the Empress's Western business. He didn't even know he was putting his foot in a pretty trap, like a fool. Tia, what about you? Now that Vise Lombardy has played a part in the West Development Project, wouldn't you be in trouble? What do you think I am? How much money does the delivery business I've made for the family now? Lombardy Delivery was well established and steadily earning cash. Clash Devon is screaming joyfully, and the growing delivery business day by day. At the growing delivery business day by day. In short, it was no exaggeration to say that the Lombardi top, which had sales along with Lombardi's delivery service, is making up for the money that Viz has wasted on the Western business. Lombardi's delivery service was already becoming a strong pillar supporting the family. The package hasn't been delivered yet. It's okay. Some are loaded to shoot right next time. I took another sip, talking leisurely. Then I met Lord Susu, who was looking at me from afar. It was so intense that I couldn't ignore it. Is he coming this way? Lord Sisu was slowly walking towards Perez and me. Naturally, many people's eyes have shifted to us along with Lord Sisu. I quickly moved a step further to widen the distance between with Perez. Lord Sisu approached Perez first with a heavy voice. Hello, Your Highness, Second Prince. I haven't seen you in a long time. It was a normal greeting. He was originally a knight commander in the imperial family, so it was not strange that he already knew Perez. The problem was the attitude of Lord Sisu. It was too confident and strangely annoying to say that he was treating the prince. There was no breach of etiquette, but it was certainly intended. It's been a long time, Lord Sisu, Perez replied, looking straight at the Lord Sisu in a stiff voice. And at that moment, I suddenly began to feel as if the temperature around me had dropped by a few degrees. The reason was Perez and Lord Sisu standing face to face. It was a war of nerves between Perez, the Aura Master, and Chanton Sisu, the former Imperial Knights commander. I looked around. The nobles were buzzing. Not just a few people saw Perez and Lord Sisu with very curious eyes. Perhaps at the end of today's banquet, it was visible that this would go viral and stir up society. And I checked on the Empress. Huh. The Empress smiled triumphantly and looked very proudly at Chanton Sisu, who was fighting Perez. Now, with this single act alone, it was clear that the stock price of Sisu had risen sharply in the Empress's head. Just by approaching and greeting in front of people, Chanton Sisu succeeded in clearly instilling the impression that he was a person who was at odds with Perez. I smiled quietly inside as I watched Perez and Chanton Sisu, who were still fighting a tight race. Perez, you're really smart. I quietly got out of the place where people's eyes were focused and took a step toward the stairs on the second floor. Hello, sir. Here you are, Lady Florentia. As promised in advance, Clarivan was there waiting for me. Clarivan politely escorted me, and we walked through the banquet hall as ordinary guests. Then some of the nobles, who looked at us at first, soon lost interest and returned to their conversations. After I checked it, I asked in a low voice, what did people say? Clarivan attended today's banquet, talking to a lot of people and gathering little information. Lady Florentia's guess was right. Instead of the hard-to-supply Triva tree, the building was built using wood available in the southern jungle of Susu. So Angenes owes a lot to Susu. It also matches Bates' information. It is to the Sisu family that Angenes sold the Western Manor to pay the immersement. It's a situation in which Angenes is completely tied to Sisu. To my question, Clarivan greeted the nobleman passing by with a grin on his face. Perhaps it's a complacency to pay back with the money they'll earn from tourism in the West. Are the nobles interested in Western tourism? Most of them, it's nobles who have so much money and nothing to do. Anything that can save their boredom is welcome. I stopped walking, looking at Clarivan, and I said with a smile, it's about time, isn't it? Clarivan smiled a little wickedly and replied, yes, Lady Florentia. Clarivan, who has been pushing for this in person, looked like he couldn't stand it because he was itching. Maybe I have a similar face. Leaning against the railing on the second floor, I looked down the first floor and I could see the nobles crowded on the first floor. They looked like fish trapped in my fishing grounds, with very, very rich fish. I said with a nod to Clarivan, then shall we move in earnest, sir? It was the last okay sign. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After going to the Empress's banquet, I've taken action too. The first was to call Avenox to the Lombardia mansion. This was because Avenox was acting as the official deputy lord of Luman when Lord of Luman returned to the east. But formally, it was an ordinary social invitation. So I chose the appointment time as a good time to have a leisurely cup of tea. From breakfast to lunch, it was time for me to sit in my drawing room and organize in my head what I was going to ask Avenox today. Knock, knock. I heard the butler's voice along with a knock. Here comes Sir Avenox Luman, lady. Come on in. I said that and got up to greet Avenox. The door opened and Avenox walked in. By the way, hello, Lady Florentia. Wow, it's so bright. I almost covered my eyes with my hands without realizing it. Whenever I saw Avenox, I thought he was like the sun because of its bright platinum blonde, supple eye color, and unique, bright personality. Today, Avenox was even more brilliant. Thank you for calling. I saw it. A perfectly groomed Avenox has a halo that I can only see when I see an artist. At the same time, I realized that Avenox would never have dressed up like this for me from head to toe. End of chapter 157. Chapter 158. Oh, yes, welcome. I pointed Avinox to the sofa first, but I couldn't take my eyes off the halo that flashed. As if conscious of my gaze, Avinox asked with a slight blush, Today, I look weird? Yes. No, you're cool. Well, that's a relief. Avinox smiled shyly. Do you have any other plans besides meeting me today, Sir Avinox? Well, it's not like that. It's just I like the weather. He dressed up like that because the weather was nice. It's obvious. Did you woke up in the morning, take a bath, and trimmed your hair neatly? Oh, because the weather is nice. Yes, it's a nice day, haha. Knowing that it was a clumsy answer, Avinox smiled, scratching his cheek. But he looked so pretty when he was shy. I stared blankly at Avinox for a few seconds. Lady Florentia, until Avinox smiled awkwardly at me. Perez and Avinox are also pretty that I'm in trouble. I managed to come to my senses and put the tea and refreshments I had prepared down in front of Avinox. The tea leaves were flower tea made by Lorraine herself a while ago. I don't know the exact name, but it was the tea I enjoy drinking these days because it smells good. Avinox grinned at the fragrant aroma of warm tea water rising from the glass. It's Ophelia flower tea. It smells really good. Is it possible to distinguish only by scent? I asked in surprise. Yes, the eastern part of the country has developed a tea culture more than the central part of the empire, and recently we've been studying a variety of tea leaves. For tea study, the person I mentioned the other day likes tea very much. Avinox replied, touching the circumference of the round teacup with his fingertips. She liked tea. Also, she likes books. When I called to Lombardi's mansion, Avinox came dressed most extravagantly. I clapped my hands as if I had just remembered. Come to think of it, may I ask how it's been since then? I'm curious because I gave you advice. Oh, that's. Avinox answered with a dry cough, as if to suppress the smile that kept leaking. I confessed my heart, according to Lady Florentia's advice. Did she accept it? Avinox nodded instead of answering. Since then, we have been exchanging letters through acquaintances, though not often. If it's all thanks to you, Lady Florentia. Did I do anything? That's what Sir Avinox, who took courage, did it. Hmm, that's what it means. I looked at Avinox with thin eyes for a moment and then brought out the subject. The reason I asked you to meet me today is that I have a few questions, Sir Avinox. Yes, feel free to ask me anything, Lady Florentia. Avinox, who has become very familiar to me since work in the north, smiled with a distinctive cheerful smile. What's the east like? Well, that's a tough question. Avinox touched his smooth chin, thinking for a moment and opening his mouth. Eastern is a warm place. Avinox's face, who said so, loosened. The wind from the far sea, the white sand heated by the sun, and the people are warm and friendly. Even Avinox's shaped lips were warm. You know what? Most of the big cities on the east coast paint their buildings white because it's cool on that side, and eastern people enjoy wearing dark and colorful clothes. And if you look down at the narrow alleys and tangled like spider webs from high places, it's like you're looking at a picture. Wow, that sounds beautiful. Yeah, a lot, of course. Oh, there's another one. Avinox said in an excited voice. There is a tradition of people playing music on the coast when it's time for people who went out to sea early in the morning to return. It was so that the ship that had left far could hear the sound and come to the house. So at sunset, there's music everywhere. That's why people from the east can play one or two instruments. As I listened to Avinox's story, I became more and more convinced that the business plan set by me and Claravan was right. It sounds like a beautiful place, but why hasn't such a good place been well known so far? I think it's a perfect destination. Avinox replied with a wry smile. Maybe it's because it's too far away. It's a 3-week trip by carriage. If we go back and forth that way, even healthy people will get sick. What if it's a one-way, not a round trip? Will it be okay to travel around? Sure, it cuts the trip in half. Avinox added, nodding his head a lot. It would be great if there was a way to replace a tough courage trip, as expected, right? I responded to Avinox and handed him an envelope containing a package of documents I had prepared. What is this? Avinox looked at me with his eyes wide open. It's a brief description of the new business that Pellet Corporation is currently working on. I prepared it in advance because I thought it could help Lumen. I wanted to meet you for a while to give you this. Avinox looked at me for a moment and pulled out the papers and started reading them. This is ice with subtle colors like sunlight in the deep sea shook wildly. You said that before. The East wants no more isolation. Wouldn't there be a better chance? Certainly. Avinox raised his head and asked me. I knew you were close to Clarivan Pellet, but how about this manual? It was reasonable doubt. I answered as I had prepared in advance. It's a business that I've been working on a bit. However, you will have to contact the Pellet Corporation for details. Of course, Mr. Clarivan already knows that I am delivering this manual to you, Sir Avinox. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lady Florentia. Avinox greeted me with twinkling eyes as if he were moved. That's not much of a considerate conversation. Would you like to walk with me for a while? It's a nice day. Yes, Avinox said, nodding passionately without any doubt. Out of my house we walked slowly. The occasional employees of the mansion looked at me and Avinox with curious eyes. I deliberately made a big turn around the mansion, along the busy road. Avinox held the briefcase I gave him in his hands and told me a story about the East. It's not the territory of the Lumen, but if you go a little further up the north coast, you will find Gitterwell. Its Emerald Beach is also very famous in the East. Oh, it's Tiliana Gitterwell's estate. Yes, it is. You remember Tiliana. Of course, thanks to her, I was able to make my debut. Until a few years ago, we exchanged letters from time to time. Actually, Tiliana is a little weak. She was seriously ill 3 years ago. Of course, she's much better now. I'm glad to hear that. Having talked like that, I came to my destination. It was Lorraine's greenhouse, located in a secluded area behind the annex. Looking from afar, Lorraine was concentrating and taking care of the flowers planted in the pot. Even today, she was a beautiful woman who couldn't give in to the flowers she cared for. And there's a lot of delicious food in our Lumen estate. Avenox was excitedly telling the Eastern story without even realizing where he had arrived. Perhaps, hearing Avenox's voice, I could see Lorraine raising her head. Clang, surprised, Lorraine missed the pot. Huh? Avenox, who stopped talking, also looked at Lorraine with wide open eyes. Avenox stopped there, rubbing his eyes a couple of times, and immediately ran towards Lorraine's side when he realized that Lorraine was real. Then he took Lorraine's hand and looked here and there and asked loudly, Lorraine, are you all right? Are you hurt? Yes, I'm fine. Lorraine's face turned red without being able to pull out his hand. Oh, I'm sorry. After realizing what he had done, Avinox quickly pulled out and stepped back. Of course, his face was no less red than Lorraine's, so that's what happened. Ever since I heard about Avinox's favorite woman in Ivan, I thought she was similar to Lorraine. I really thought she was Lorraine. I'll clean this up. Please go over there. Oh, no, I know you'll hurt your hand. I'll do it. Now they were stepping on each other to get rid of the broken flower pot. Lorraine and Avinox, who are coloring their shy faces red, looked very pretty. I watched such two people from afar. You two suit well. Lorraine is a flower-like person who grown in a greenhouse with a vengeance. Avenox could be the sunshine for such Lorraine. I don't want to see Lorraine wither alone in a lonely place like in my previous life. Okay, East would be better for Lorraine. In a place where the warm wind and music blow, wouldn't Lorraine be able to bloom without worry? I read the book you lent me last time, Sir Avenox. I'm glad you liked it. I watched the two for a while and came back quietly. It was to provide a cozy space for the two of them. A little while ago, I purposely took Avenox and went around the mansion. People will think Avenox came to Lombardy to meet me, and taking Avenox to the Lorraine's greenhouse is what I can do for Lorraine now. As I was alone again, walking in the garden, I felt strange for some reason. Lorraine and Avenox. On second thought, it's totally unexpected, but they're a very good couple, and I'll have to ask Lorraine later. What kind of bastard dares to talk about marriage with Lorraine? Whether it's the same person from the previous life or another person. Just thinking about it makes me angry. Viz, you bastard. Just try to marry Lorraine, the weirdo again in this lifetime. Just in time, I stepped on the stone stuck on the tip of my foot. That way, it's not much, but I feel a little better. I walked slowly back to my house, thinking about how many times I should invite Avenox to the mansion, and I found a man standing at the door of my house. Hi, Tia. It was Perez, who made a private visit with a box of cakes from Caramel Avenue in one hand. End of chapter 158. Chapter 100. Chapter 159. I was surprised. Yeah, to be honest, I thought about Perez when I was Lorraine, and when I saw Lorraine and Avenox a little while ago, but that's just a glimpse. Tia, as I stood still without approaching anymore, Perez walked toward me, and for a moment he looked at my expression with a smile and asked, By any chance, were you finally thinking about me? Oh, no, I'm doomed. I denied it too loudly. When did you get to read other people's minds when you looked like a statue with a straight face? Perez opened his eyes wide due to my strong denial and soon smiled again, bending his eyes finally. Why? Why are you here? Perez answered my question, lifting a box of cake in his hand. I thought of you on my way somewhere. You always tend to relate me to sweet food, Perez. Of course I like sweet food, but I suddenly had a question while talking. But where are you going, passing the Lombardi mansion? To meet a close classmate at the academy. As far as I know, it was Lignite Lumen, Avenox's brother, who was his best friend at the academy. Then he's on his way to the Monarch Top. The Monarch Top branch is also in the capital. It's near the palace. I squinted and asked again, Are you sure you're on your way? When I poked, Perez kept his mouth shut and just smiled. That's the face he makes when he can't even lie to me. Well, you must have something difficult to tell other people too, I said with a shrug. Thank you, I'll enjoy the meal. The cake box handed over from Perez was quite heavy. Your hands are big. I can never eat this alone. I pointed to the closed door and asked Perez, would you like to go get a cup of tea with cake? Can I? Perez raised his eyebrows, surprised. What, Perez, what's wrong with your reaction? Because I didn't make an appointment in advance. I thought it was because I said a long time ago, I'm busy, so contact me in advance. I opened the door with a small sigh, beckoning to come in. Did you have guests? Paris looked at the teapots of two people still on the table and asked. Avinox Lumen came and went. Avinox? Why? It turned out that Avinox was dating Lorraine. It's a secret to other people. Actually, I called him to discuss the Eastern business case and found out about it. I said it without saying anything important. Oh. Perez nodded, quickly surprised. I picked the right tea leaves and made tea again. As expected, Caramel Avenue's dessert is the best. Eating a lot of sweet custard cream seemed to relieve my fatigue. Perez also took a bite of the same cake, mine, and nodded in agreement. So, we sat side by side and finished the cake one after another. Eventually, there is only one small cream pie left on the plate. It's embarrassing to blame him for buying a lot. Perez was patting his stomach with satisfaction and said, Tia, you got something on your mouth. Oh, really? At the words, I looked around, but I couldn't see anything to wipe my mouth. I was thinking about wiping it with my sleeve. I'll clean it for you. Perez reached out and swept my mouth with his fingers. It was so natural and outspoken that I missed the right time to stop it. I looked at Perez in a daze. I could feel Perez's fingers slowly touching my lips. At that moment, things in Ivan suddenly came to my mind as if they were on fire. That thing in the bed. Apparently, my face is on fire too. When a woman has cream on her lips, it is common to steal it with your fingers. At least that was the case in books or news about romance. Yeah, it's such a common and sometimes cheesy scene. My heart was beating so too hard, facing Perez now. Perez's finger brushed my lips, were as hot as fire, and I couldn't take my eyes off Perez's mouth, licking the stolen cream. He must have noticed that too, when I see a smile hanging on his red lips. Dot. I scooped up the leftover dessert with the fork I had put down. I heard Perez laughing low next to me, but I focused only on the cake. Of course, this time I'll be careful not to get anything in my mouth. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Galliahan visited Pellet Corporation after a long time. Not long after, returning from Cheshire. There was still a lingering feeling, but Galliahan's face was full of life. It was because he had such a good thing ahead of him. Arriving in front of Clarivan's office, Galliahan knocked without hesitation. Come on in. As if waiting, the voice of Clarivan immediately came. Sir Clarivan, here you are, Clarivan said with a smile, offering Galliahan a seat. You look happy. Aren't the harbor open soon? What I've been busy preparing since last year will soon become a reality. My heart beats so fast that I can't sleep. Galliahan's green eyes sparkled. Clarivan smiled a little at the sight of Galliahan. Then let's go through the plan again. For such a long time, Clarivan and Galliahan put their heads together to review the papers. Galliahan, who finally confirmed that all preparations were complete, nodded with a proud face. I would never have done this I would never have done this on my own without Pellet Corporation, although I'm called the Lord of Cheshire, but of course, there's something I don't know. Thank you so much, Sir Caravan. Instead of investing, our pellet business's ships will not pay a berth fee at the Cheshire Harbor in the future, right? And we've shared the profits of the port, so it's not something to thank you for, Galliahan. Haha, is that so? Galliahan smiled awkwardly and carefully packed the papers. Clarivan, who was watching the scene, said, taking off his glasses, but it's been a while since we've sat face to face. If it's a long time ago, Galliahan, who tilted his head, asked, clapping his hands. Oh, you mean when I went to ask you about the ready-to-wear business? Yes, that's right. At that time, you were difficult to have a proper conversation with me. But looking at your skillful appearance now, I think a lot of time has passed. Clarivan said with a small smile. Gallihan's face turned slightly red, perhaps because he thought the smile was making fun of him. At that time, I was afraid of you. I couldn't help it. Gallihan smirks about what happened back then. How about now? Clarivan asked in a low voice. There is nothing to be afraid of now. Now I know how kind and friendly you are. Do you mean I'm? Yes, Sir Clarivan takes very good care of the people around you, Gallihan answered cheerfully. That's the case with this port. I'm worried about Cheshire. So you gave me your hand. I didn't do such a thing. I know, it's a great opportunity for Pellet Corporation, Gallihan said, staring directly at Clarivan. However, I'm being well aware of how much the Pellet Corporation has taken care of the convenience of our Cheshire as we proceed with this work. If it was really for profit, you wouldn't have done it. Clarivan did not give an answer. Gallihan smiled loosely as he looked at Clarivan, who sat silently. Thanks to you, people in Cheshire will have a much better life. Large commercial districts will be developed around ports, and now there is something else to do besides farming. The local people don't have to starve during the bad harvest. It's all thanks to Pellet Corporation. Gallihan bowed his head briefly. It was a thank you greeting. Clarivan, who watched the scene silently, spoke quietly, fiddling with his earlobe, which was somewhat red. Don't misunderstand it. I'm glad it was helpful. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After leaving the Lombardi mansion, Paris returned to the capital. As Tia had noticed, I was on my way was a lie. On the way to the Monarch Top, he saw a Caramel Avenue, and he thought of Tia, so he bought a cake and wanted to deliver it. Of course, Caramel Avenue was also offering a delivery service, but Paris pretended not to know it. He thinks he should give the cake to Tia because he already bought it. The meeting was delayed because of it, but Paris's priorities were clear, so it didn't matter. Lignite and Nosier, who was waiting, greeted Paris. How's the business in the south? It's going on without a hitch. It's also much easier, perhaps because of the incident about logging triba trees in the north. What about the payment? Will be dealt with soon. Isn't it, Susu? It's being settling quickly. Paris nodded slowly to Nosier's satisfactory report, but not everything was smooth. Investigations into the Pellet Corporation did not yield great results. There is really nothing to find out. Lignite trembled as if he was bored. Clarivan Pellet is clean, except he's frighteningly bold and has accurate eyes. He used to say that, but Lignite was also somewhat reluctant. Merchants usually get their hands dirty as much as they earn, but Clarivan Pellet was not. Nevertheless, Pellet Corporation's superiority continues to win and win every day. Rather, that raised the alarm in Lignite's head. How can he be so successful in every business he touches? I heard he did another job this time. Pellet Corporation? The harbor that was built in Cheshire was funded by Pellet Corporation. I think they're going to distribute goods to the east through them. To the east? It's because the road is rough, but there's no market that's as good as the east. Most of the goods coming in from the center are very expensive. The Pellet Corporation will make money. Even after hearing that, Perez didn't say much. Perez, he called Perez, who was lost in thought, but there was still no answer. Eastern, Avenox. Perez just mumbled words that didn't make sense. End of chapter 159. Chapter 160. Meanwhile, a loud noise echoed in the townhouse of the Engenes family located in the capital. Hey, what are you doing? The Empress' younger brother and the new lord of Engenes, Luigi Engenes, screamed at the man who stood in his way with a frightened face. I can't believe a knight commander of Engenes imprisoned the head of a family. Luigi Engenes was only leaving the office to attend the social club salon, until he found Ethan Klaus, knight commander of the Engenes family, hold the door. Apart from Lord's orders to step aside from the way, Ethan Klaus did not budge. Dressed in thick armor, he stood tall like a mountain, just looking down at Luigi and Janus with an indifferent face. Hey, there is a man who disobeyed the order of the Lord of Angenas. Drag this guy. Even if I shouted until the veins stood in his neck, there was no sign of a move in the empty hallway. As if everyone knew about Luigi and Janus' situation and escaped. It was a chilling moment. Do you get it now, Luigi? Slowly turning from the corner was Empress Rabini, wearing a long veil. Who is the real owner of Angenas? How could you do this to me? Ah, I didn't want to do this either, but you didn't want to listen to me to postpone the payment of Lombardy construction. But there's an appointment date, and there's constant pressure from Lombardy. So, after all, you must be more afraid of Lombardy than I am. Empress Rabini smiled and asked, How are you now, Luigi? Luigi and Janus looked at Rabini with a tired face and shook his head. I don't understand you, my sister. You owe so much to Susu and Lombardy. Aren't you worried? What's there to worry about? The Western business is finished, and all we have to do is harvest the fruit. Tuck, tuck, the sound of Empress Rabini approaching Luigi echoed in the hallway. My poor and stupid little brother, you are the son of our father. She clicked her tongue. Tourism is not everything in the West. Money is saved where people gather. There will be a miracle that a big city will be built on land that cannot be farmed properly. It's a miracle I made. So there's nothing you need to worry about, Luigi. The blue eyes looking at Luigi and Janus shone coldly. Other than your own ignorance. Empress Rabini's fingertips tapped Luigi and Janus on the cheek, and she clicked her tongue again, looking at her brother's face, stained with fear and anger. I'll overlook your mistake this time, but not the second time. Do you understand? In a very sweet voice, Empress Rabini whispered, You can continue to do as I say, then you will be able to enjoy your life as the Lord of Angenas. The Empress who said so gave Ethan Klaus a wink. Then the Knight of Angenas, who stands tall, moved aside and gave way. The Empress looked at it satisfactorily, then turned and walked away. But Luigi exclaimed, Hey, you can't do it like this. Sigh, what else do you mean, Luigi? When he stopped, the Empress' face eventually became very annoyed. The way to change the way to change Angena's Lord is simple. If the current Angena's Lord dies or becomes incapable of fulfilling its duties as the Lord, This business, I'm sure I'll follow my sister's advice. But what are you going to do with the throne? Shouldn't you make the first prince the crown prince? So what? Dark flash flashed in Empress Robina's eyes as she asked slowly. There is talk among the nobility about the suitability of the first prince. He only hunts with young nobles every day. You should have made him study now. Slap. The Empress, who walked in the wind, slapped Luigi with all her might. Red blood flowed from the face that was scratched by the ring she was wearing. God damn it, how dare you talk to me about my son? Empress Zerbini stared at Luigi and Janice with fierce eyes, but something was wrong. There was a smile in his eyes, which seemed to be full of anger at first glance. Luigi was aware of the look. It was the face Zerbini used to make when she was caught up on something when she was young. You're still quick-witted, Luigi. Empress Zerbini smiled as if she had been caught. It was a chilling grin somewhere. His Majesty will never have the second prince as his crown prince. That lowly thing was born to resemble the wrong person. Also, even if it does happen, Rabini significantly shined his eyes and shortened her words. In the end, my son will be crowned as crown prince, so you don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. From now on, you can just do what you like to do now, just like you. Ah, only then did Luigi know Robini's plan and instinctively tried to back off. The Emperor smiled and said, because this mother will take care of everything. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It's been a long time since I've been alone in the evening. My father was reading a book after dinner, alone because the meeting at the Pellet Corporation seemed to be late. Knock, knock. It was then that a small knock was heard. Come on in. When I answered, the door carefully opened and Lorraine came in. Can I talk to you for a second, Tia? Of course. Sit here, Lorraine. Lorraine looked a little nervous. I've already guessed the reason, but I acted like I didn't know anything. Would you like a cup of tea? Oh, no, I've been drinking in this one. Lorraine, who hesitated for a while, held out a bunch of white flowers. Tiny flowers the size of a thumb were tied up in abundance. It's langpa flower. It smells strong, so it's good to put it by the window. Thank you, Lorraine. I'm also enjoying the flower tea you gave me last time. Tell me whenever you need it, Tia. I have a lot. There's always something to be grateful for from Lorraine. It didn't mean much. Lorraine, who blinked her big blue eyes without a word, said in a small voice, The one to thank is me, Tia. Lorraine's two hands on her knees seemed to clench the hem of her dress. Thank you for today. I came by to say that. Lorraine's voice even trembled slightly. Lorraine, I didn't do anything wrong, did I? I asked carefully. Huh? Oh, no, that's not what I meant, Tia. Lorraine replied, shaking her hands in surprise. Thanks to you, I was able to see Sir Avenox. A faint smile appeared on Lorraine's face, which was slightly bowed. That was a pretty smile. I asked a little mischievously, You like Sir Avenox so much, Lorraine? Huh? Oh my God. One question from me made Lorraine's face so red that she couldn't blush anymore. She used to be shy because of her personality, but I've never seen such a red face. Sir Avenox makes me laugh. It was a word that Lorraine brought up after a long time. You know, I'm a little timid, so I feel awkward and nervous when I'm with people. But when I'm with Sir Avenox, I find myself smiling comfortably because I can see that he is a person who truly cares about me. I guess I'm relieved. Lorraine looked very comfortable saying that. What a strange thing, Tia. I've never been so comforted by my parents who gave birth to me or my younger brother who grew up with me. I patted the back of Lorraine's hand, who said something bitter. For the time being, think only of yourself, Lorraine. If Lorraine is happy and comfortable, that's it. Tia. Lorraine looked at me with trembling eyes and smiled bitterly. As expected, you know about the marriage. What's going on? Fortunately, nothing has been decided yet. It's just that my parents tell me to get ready. I think there are a few candidates. Candidate? Tia knows that. Now my father's situation is a little complicated. I ended up sighing. Viz is now considering where to marry his daughter to benefit him the most. There is only one daughter, and having an in-law through marriage can be a huge opportunity or a card to cover up big mistakes. I know how selfish it is to accept Sir Avenox's heart in this situation, but I like Sir Avenox so much. Lorraine's voice was tremble. Lorraine, who grew up hearing that she had to marry a person who was decided for the convenience of her family. You probably feel enormous guilt just because you fell in love with Avenox ahead of your marriage. I quietly moved to the opposite seat, and I hugged Lorraine tightly. As I said a little while ago, only think of yourself, Lorraine. Nothing has been decided yet, so don't be so sad already. Thank you, Tia. Lorraine's body trembled. I brushed her back and told Lorraine in her ear, It's okay, Lorraine, because no one knows what's going to happen. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A few days later, Gallihan was greeted with discomfort by a sudden visit to the clothing store. He didn't even contact him in advance and came to the office located in the main branch of the Gallihan clothing store. The random visit without a word meant that he already knew when and where Gallihan was. In addition, Gallihan was very nervous and clenched his fist because the one who came to meet him was his opponent, but he didn't show any signs of it. Rather, he He straightened his chest and asked the visitor in a calm voice, "What brings you here all of a sudden, Lord Chanton Susu?" End of chapter 160.